welcome back to the We're So Bloody Early podcast. We could not be more excited for our guest today. So yeah, Jigs, Matty and I are very happy to introduce Mr. Mark Moss.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. I love the name of that, by the way.
Yeah. We were inspired by, so much of the work we've seen around us, and it summarizes something that's very simple, actually, that people just don't get. And I'm sure it will come up in the conversation today. So for our listeners out there that perhaps don't know yourself, Mark, could you give us a very high-level introduction to yourself? And after that, then we'll jump into more of a journey starting right at the beginning with how this all began for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, just so the kind of beginning entry level piece, kind of what I'm working on right now is, I mean, I've been kind of an online educator for several years. I have a YouTube channel where I'm trying to wake people up and trying to wake up the sleeping lions, as I like to say. I have the first Bitcoin or crypto nationally syndicated radio show in the United States. I speak on stages, around the country. Just trying to, put the message out there as much as I can. So that's kind of who I am and what I'm working on right now at this time.
Awesome. Thank you very much. No, and I cannot lie. It's absolutely awesome to have you to talk to today, because I've consumed plenty of your content, specifically in the last 12 months. It's excellent.
Cool. Thank you.
Before we get to that, Mark, so I always love a good story through life. And one is really only just the amalgamation of all their experiences that brings them to today. So could you give us a brief introduction to where was home, where you grew up, and perhaps then get into your business career a bit? And Jigs and Matty will have 100 questions, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we want to go way back, I mean, I'm from the United States. I kind of grew up as a young boy in Texas, which is kind of the bastion of freedom in the United States at this point, it seems like. I had a little bit in Texas. That's what I was saying, in Texas.
What year?
Oh, 74.
Okay.
So 74. So kind of at the end of the Vietnam War. My grandfather was a World War II vet. My father was a Vietnam War vet. And my father was still in the Air Force when I was born. So kind of born into a military family. Kind of grew up, I would say, a little bit unconventional in today's terms, especially where, my parents were grassroots political. We still discuss politics around the table with my family, all super conservative in today's regard. And even when I was a kid, I for a few years, I was homeschooled, which in today's day and age isn't that big of a deal. But back then that was a pretty big deal. And I think back to those things. And the reason why I bring those up is because I think about, like, I try to reverse engineer, like, how did I get to the point where I'm at? Like, why is it that I see things differently than other people? So I think that was a big piece of it. My father was after the Air Force, he was just a contractor, construction worker. So that's kind of like an entrepreneur, right? So like I kind of grew up in an entrepreneurial home, very traditional type values, I guess. And so I think that helped shaped it. When I was going into high school, I moved to Southern California, and I've lived in Southern California the rest of my life. Kind of grew up doing the action sports thing. So kind of chased a pro snowboard career and a big wave surf career, and I raced dirt bikes. And I think all those pieces were helpful in me kind of becoming risk adverse. I was going to say, well, yeah, risk taker, if you will. And so, I've pretty much at this point broken pretty much all my limbs. I have metal in all 4 of my limbs. I've broken my back. And so, but it's taught me to just like, okay, let me just dust myself off. Let me try that again. And I think that's important because the life of an entrepreneur and an investor is not a smooth one. And I'm used to just, like I said, breaking my bone, getting out of the hospital, and let me try that jump again. Let's see if it works out this time. And so there's that. As soon as I got out of high school, I didn't go to college. It just wasn't for me. And I was 18 and I bought a house, a bank repo property from the bank, and it was all messed up. The bank owned tons of these properties because we just gone through this big recession in California, and they were basically just trying to give them away. And at the time, they couldn't give these houses away because most of them had been pretty messed up in the foreclosure process. The kitchens were ripped out, floors were ripped out, so people couldn't get loans on them. So they'd sell them to an investor like me, no money down, and then I could fix them up, add value to them. It's a key piece, add value to them, and I could sell them. And man, I didn't even have, it was zeroed down, but I didn't have the money for the closing costs. I think it was like $3,000 at the time. So I took on a partner, and him and I fixed it up, and we sold it. We made like 30 grand on that first place. And that was when I was 18 years old. And so I was off to the races. And so basically my whole career has been investing, and, you know, the line between business owner and investor are very blurred. I fixed and flipped over 100 homes at that time. Was I a real estate investor, or was that my business? Right. I mean, the lines get very blurred. When I'm investing into businesses, I'm a business owner. I've started multiple businesses. Multiple businesses. One of the key businesses I think that's key for my journey is that in 2001, so we had the dot-com run up, we had the height of the dot-com bubble, and then we had the crash in 2001 right when the bubble had burst. I was like, I have a good idea. I'll start a business selling products online. And actually, I invested into a e-commerce business in 1999, and I thought I was going to get super rich because anything with a .com in the title at the time got tons of money. And I was probably just like weeks too late in the bubble burst. So then 2001 comes along. I started an e-commerce business. There was no Shopify or any of that WordPress back then. I had to like hire a custom developer and spent like 25 grand to build this website out. And I went to these brands and I said, hey, I want to sell your products on my website. And they laughed at me and they told me nobody would ever buy anything online. That's ridiculous. And I'm like, well, I think they will. And like, I spent all this money on this website. Like, at least here, just take my money.
You were too
yeah, like just give me, here's my money. Just give me your products. And they said, we don't even want our products sold on a website. So I was like, okay. So anyway, built that company up, did really well with it, had a Fortune 500 exit on that, sold, multiple other businesses. Fast forwarding, then 2008 comes along, and I had sold a couple businesses that I had, sold all my rental properties, and I was super heavy in developing real estate from the ground up, big projects, 8-figure projects. And then 2008 came and wiped me out. And, I had gotten rid of all my businesses that were good cash flow businesses. I got rid of all my rental properties that were good cash flow. And I was all in on a couple really, really big projects that, if it would have worked out, would have been great. Unfortunately, it didn't. And, I got my butt kicked. And so again, well, let me figure this thing out. And so I was like, dang, I'm pretty good at making money. Like I've made tens of millions of dollars. I'm really good at making money, but like, what the heck is this financial casino? Because like, I don't know what's going on in this financial market. And so I had to figure it out. Right. I vowed to myself to never let that happen again. That was never going to happen again. And so I started digging in. And once I dug in, I found gold. I became a gold bug. I learned that sound money was the thing that we needed, and the fiat inflationary money system was the problem. I became a big time gold bug, and started subscribing to financial newsletters like crazy. And like, I got to figure this out. I got to figure it out. And so I did that. And then in 2016, I started writing. In 2015, well, a key piece to the story, I guess, is then after getting blown up in 2008 and then getting back going again, I remember the 2012 election was horrible. And I was just over politics. I was over the whole thing. I was subscribing to this newsletter at the time called Sovereign Man. And Sovereign Man is basically about being a sovereign man, which is like, you wouldn't have all your money in one stock. So why do you, and this is a question we're going to come back to you guys. I wouldn't have all my money in one stock. So why would I have my whole life in one country? We're going to talk about that later. That's what he says. And I've been subscribed to that for a dozen years. It's really what's shaped my worldview for what it is today. So I was like, that's absolutely right. Why would I? In today's digital age, I mean, why does it matter if my bank account's in Singapore or Hong Kong or Panama? But I mean, it's all wire transfers and debit cards anyway. That's right. Passports. Yeah. Why don't I have multiple passports? And so in 2015, I was in the process of going through one of his recommendations, and I was working with his attorney down in Panama to open up a bank account and a trust and start working on a residency thing in Panama. And I took another look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin had been on my radar. I mean, I was involved in the internet space and whatnot, but the price was going up and down, up and down. I wasn't really paying attention to it. But in 2015, I took another look at it and I said, wait a minute, this is the exact same thing. I can get my money out of the banking system and I can put it into Bitcoin. And I never ended up going to Panama. I never ended up opening up the bank account down there. I put all my money into Bitcoin. That was a great decision. And by 2016, I started telling my friends and family about it. And then I'm answering the same questions over and over and over. And being an internet marketing guy, I'm like, why don't I just make a video so I could just answer the question one time? I don't have to answer it again. Yeah. And so that reluctantly, I kind of started like this research newsletter. I wrote a cryptocurrency research newsletter for 4 years, from 2016 to 2019. And during the course of that time, I absolutely crushed it out of the park. I put out over 20 calls that went up over 1,000% during that time, which I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, anybody could have done that. But in 2017, at the height of the bubble, there was only 24 positions that went up more than 1,000%. So I nailed 20 of them. It's pretty good. But then what happened is like a lot of my subscribers, I mean, I could never imagine doing that good again or have ever done that good. But like a lot of people were still losing money. And I'm like, how can people be losing money when I've literally just laid that out for them, right? But it was because they were making the same mistake I made. They didn't understand the rules of investing and the rules of putting money into different types of asset classes and things like that. They didn't understand the rules of how much to put into what, et cetera. And so I sold my half of my business, that business at the time, to my partner. He's still running it today. And I launched a new business, which is to give people the rest of the education so they don't make the same mistake I was making. And that was the painful thing. I was like, dude, these people are making the same mistake I made in 2008. And I don't want that to happen. So anyway, I've been doing that. And, is
that the four
pillar blueprint? Yeah. So I launched the 4-pillar blueprint to teach that. And yeah, I mean, and that kind of brings us to where we are present day today. That was the fast forward version.
That's a pretty good version. I like the really, really early stages. That was cool. I've never heard that before.
Well, boys, you've probably got 100 questions. So one of you want to jump in?
Yeah, I will, Mark. I mean, your story is fascinating. I will say 1974, you look bloody good, mate. You obviously take care of yourself.
Lots of sun, man. Lots of sun.
Yeah, no, it's not enough vitamin D for a lot of people out there. One thing that really resonates with myself, I'm a young father, as we all are on this show, Jigs and Jake. And one thing that you mentioned is I try very intently to try and navigate my kids through risk assessment. So fear typically limits people's capability, and fear is put into us, whether it's media, schools, friends, family. Fear is evil, and fear certainly limits one's capability and potential. As a young kid, you mentioned you grew up in a family where you had an entrepreneurial mindset around you. You were homeschooled. You recognized that you were able to differentiate the way that you thought about things. You also recognized that you had ability and talented in multiple assets and areas. At what point did you recognize that, one, it was a gift, but two, how were you going to harness that? And three, limits of capability, it can also be crossed with recklessness. That breaking of the bones in the back's not great. You don't want to replicate that like you did in 2008. I mean, to the listeners out there, when to push yourself and how to really pick yourself up and challenge yourself to be the best that you can and not be scared of fear, but actually understand what it is.
Well, there's a lot to dig in on that. I would say, one, as you said, right, fear is a learned response, right? So like a little kid might run over to a snake, and if they look back and see their parent with this like scared look on their face, then the kid's automatically going to be scared of that snake the rest of their life. So it's definitely a learned response. I would say kind of to the next part though, like when did I first learn and kind of think about harnessing that? It wasn't until I got older, right? It's like the fish doesn't know it's in water, right? The fish doesn't know it's in water. Like I didn't know. I mean, it was just what I did, right? And I think it probably wasn't until I got older. I spent about probably from maybe the age of 20 to 30, I probably spent a good decade really digging into personal development stuff.
Yeah. Goal
setting programs and just really getting to know myself and getting to understand like the human mind. And so it probably wasn't until, maybe towards the end of that, till my late 20s or 30, where I really started going, dang, like, I feel like I've been given a gift, right? Like, I'm trying to say it in a way that doesn't sound bad, but like, I feel like I've been given a gift,
Sorry to interrupt. That's one thing. There's a tall poppy syndrome in Australia, where people that succeed or reach their full capability can be knocked on the head and deemed as arrogant or otherwise, but there's something that I really believe in, and that's praise. You know, it's okay to give yourself self-praise, and I'm really glad that you held yourself back there, because I wouldn't want you to. You know, I think it's listening to you was remarkable. It's one of a kind. You know, I really appreciate you sharing it with us, and there's nothing wrong with succeeding. I think it's fabulous.
But you asked me at like what point did I recognize it and harness it? And yeah, it wasn't until I got older where I was like, dang, I feel like I've been given a gift. I should make the most out of it. So it came with age. It came with perspective, I think. And I think a lot of that was also probably through accomplishment, right? Through true merit, right? So, I mean, I had done it, right? Like I had achieved the highest level of snowboarding and motocross and like surfing and like business and like pretty much everything I've done, you know, like, I don't consider myself the most competitive person. I'm just super competitive with myself. Like I always want to get better. Every day I want to be better and better. And then I guess onto the other thing that you asked, which is like, you know, some people are scared, they have that fear. And then, you know, how can they push past that fear, but without doing damage to themselves, getting hurt, et cetera. And the part I'd say about that is you can't, and you have to be okay with that. So what do I mean by that? So like a lot of times I'll be talking to friends or even my wife or whatever, and I'm like, hey, what about this idea? We could do this. It's going to be so good. Because I'm this like eternal optimist, right? And they'll say, yeah, but like this is probably going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And my response is, you're right. All those things are going to happen, and I don't care. That's how I approach things. You're absolutely right. Every bad thing that you just said is probably going to happen is going to happen. I already accept that, and I'm still okay with it. And so I guess that's kind of the way that I look at it. Back to risk management, I was sitting down with a couple of younger guys before I got on this podcast, and they actually, we were having a similar conversation about risk management. And I was telling them, here's how I manage risk. 1, if I make this decision and it goes bad, what's the worst that's going to happen? And 2, am I okay with that? And that's how I approach risk management. The bad things, they're going to happen. They're just gonna, and you're just gonna have to be okay with it.
Yeah, do a bit of.
Yeah, and I mean, shoot, man, I'm jumping my dirt. I mean, like we're out in the hills on our dirt bikes, and we're like with shovels digging in these hills and going, how far do you think that is? I don't know, 60 feet, 70 feet. Do you think that lip's high enough? I don't know. Who's going to hit it first? Like, all right. So, I mean, you know, risk some things, but obviously I'm older now. I don't do that stuff quite as much anymore, but yeah, everything has risks. And I think you just have to understand that the risks are there. You have to believe that your skill and your preparation is enough to give you the edge, right? In life, we're always looking for that edge. Without an edge, you probably shouldn't be doing anything. And then you do it, right? And a lot of it just comes through experience. So I like to go surf big waves. I travel around the world to surf big waves. And I've taught a lot of people how to surf waves. And at first you go out in like a little tiny 1 foot wave, and that's super scary for people, right? And like the more that you go out, the more your comfort level goes up. Being in California, we don't have that big of waves, not like some of them like in West Oz or something, but maybe they're, head high. 6-8 foot is like really big for California. So like, I like to go to Hawaii in the winter. Well, Hawaii's got really big waves, like 30-foot waves. Right. And like, I go out on like a 10 or 12 foot day, and it's like scary for me because I don't surf that on a regular basis, but the guys from Hawaii, it's like, that's like small for them. And like, we were out there one day, and this guy, Jamie O'Brien, JOB, he's out there on soft tops, and they're dropping in on waves, laying down on the board, riding backwards, jumping off the wave. And I'm freaking out. It's scary. So, it's like as your skill level progresses, as you do it more and more, you just approach that risk differently.
Yeah, you condition yourself.
Yep, yeah, exactly.
That experience that you mentioned, I think, again, is really a valid point. And, if you don't learn to swim, you're going to sink, right? And that I couldn't agree with you more. Fascinating. You're an amazing man. Well, Jigs, I know you've got a great relationship with Mark, and I'm a subscriber to Mark's 4 blueprint. How do I pronounce it again? Sorry, 4-pillar blueprint.
4-pillar blueprint.
That's right. And I mean, the reason I came across you is you talk about you found your gift. I always thought I didn't have a gift, right? And I failed all the way through my life, and never. I just thought I'd just be a failure. I thought I was sent here by someone upstairs to just. People look at me and go, look at that guy, he fails, don't do what he's doing. And then And I was working in an industry here, which is cash and money. And I was just seeing it diminishing. I mean, Australia's ranked in the top 5 for PayWave. So we don't even use really cash. So everything's digital PayWave, right?
Yeah.
And I had a moment in my life where I was injured myself in running and I needed to focus on something else. And I just had my back against the wall. And I needed to, I mean, I believe we're all born with a parachute, and everyone just needs to learn to get over that fear of jumping off and seeing if your parachute opens. And I started trying to scramble, trying to look for something to latch onto to give me some direction. And I came across your YouTube channel, and that's when I started to pay attention. And so, like, for us here in Australia, you know, in particular, Jake and myself being in Melbourne, we've experienced some of the worst draconian laws that have been implemented, right? And we've had a torrid 2 years. But going back to history and your history and all that, you know, what I learned from your channel is you started to talk about history, and it started to give me a little bit of hope, right? That things that happened in the past generally repeat. They don't exact, but they rhyme. And so, you know, you talk about these 3 cycles that are converging. Now, I'm a hybrid trader, and I know from an indicator, one indicator doesn't give you the story. You need multiple indicators to give you convergence, confluence, and then you can put together and figure out maybe where the puck, like you say, where the puck is going and where you can get to. So could you maybe touch on that, like this history that's happened and is now maybe repeating with these 3 huge cycles?
Yeah, for sure. It's a big thesis I've been working on for about 6 months now. And it's progressing. And I just signed a deal with a book publisher a couple of days ago, and it's going to be coming out as a book.
Yes.
It's that big. I mean, I guess basically real quickly to kind of cover that is that one, yes, the history is a never-ending repeating cycle. And so while things are moving exponentially, people think things move linear, but really things move exponential, but then the cycles just kind of repeat within that. And so the 3 that we look at, as you kind of said, right, you're looking for different cycles that converge. And so these are from different spectrums. And so we have like this 250-year political revolution cycle. There's a 50-year technological revolution cycle, and then there's an 80-year financial revolution cycle. So one's finance, one's tech, one's politics. They're on different time frames, but they're all 3 converging right now. So that's kind of the high level what it is. And I think it's important, if you want to understand how we got here, like what the heck is going on right here, you have to understand the history, and then, of course, more importantly, what happens in the future. And so to kind of go over it super quick, the 5-minute version of it is that about every 80 years, there's a bunch of cycles. There's 8-year and 28-year. And what's interesting is if you look at any chart, any graph, like you'll see like there's typically 3 big ones and then like a big drop. So in technical analysis, there'd be like a triple bottom, or like 3 bubbles and then like the big crash or whatever. And so the big ones are like there's 28-year cycles, and 3 times 28 is 84. And so every 84 years you have what's like a populist uprising or like a regime change cycle. I don't know about Australia. I haven't really studied Australia's politics that much, but you might know if you look back. But about 84 years ago, in the U.S., worldwide was World War II, the end of World War II. So I'm guessing that affected Australia. End of World War II, and it was Hitler, Mussolini, and in the U.S. we had the New Deal, which kind of turned the United States into a socialist nation. So that was 84 years ago. 84 years before that was Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, which led to the European Spring, which is the largest revolution in European history. And then again, so 3 times 28 is 84. 3 times 84 is 252. So every 250 years, there's a revolution cycle. So 250 years ago was the American and the French Revolution. 250 years before that was the Protestant Reformation. And what each one of those signify is rejecting centralization or globalization, pushing back on that, and then moving into decentralization. So in the Protestant Reformation, it was going against the centralization of the church and the state. and there was only one way to God, and the church had the Bible, and there was no way around it. But then the printing press decentralized the information. People were able to get the Bible, and they realized, I don't need the church. I can have my own decentralized path. Of course, in the American French Revolution, the same thing, right? Rejecting the centralized monarchy of the state. And in the United States, set up a decentralized government. A lot of people mistake, and I think the United States is a democracy. The United States is not a democracy. The United States is a republic. A republic is a decentralized government. All 50 states are independent and sovereign. And so you can kind of see that. And what's interesting is that also every 250 years, the way it breaks is the opposite. So kind of going back to being a trader, if you looked at a chart like a wedge pattern, you know it's going to break out, but which way is it going to break out? So every 250 years, the revolution, when we push back on centralization and go to decentralization, it's been flip-flopping. So 500 years ago, it broke to creativity. And 250 years ago, it broke to, it was the Industrial Revolution, which was like analytical. And so this time we can see that we're at peak centralization. All right. So we have the World Economic Forum, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the World Meteorological Association, the UN, the IMF, the WF, the BIS, right? So we're at peak centralization, and we can see that all over the world, in Australia and the rest of the world, they're pushing back on this very, very hard, right? So while the world is just trying to cram everybody together, we're all in this together. People are rejecting that and pushing back. The pendulum, it swings like this, and it's maxing out. 2023 is approximately the date that, you know, we kind of hit the top of that cycle, and it's starting to push back, and then the pendulum will swing back the other way towards decentralization and a creative swing towards decentralization, which is an important piece, which I'll get to back in a moment. But
is that what you're referring? Sorry, are you referring to the fourth turning there of coming into 2023? Is that?
Well, the fourth turning is an 80-year cycle. So I do reference the fourth turning, which is an 80-year cycle. And that's kind of like the four, like hard time, weak times bring hard, or bad times bring strong men great times mean weak men bring bad times. And it kind of repeats. And I think you could probably see that in Australia. Like you had hard times, so right?
Weak men is creating bad times at the moment.
But you had a prison colony, right? And so those hard times created strong men. And I remember, you know, with Crocodile Dundee, I mean, Australians were known to be like really manly men. That's not a knife. This is a knife, right? Like it was like Australians. I mean, at least coming from America, like Australians were known as being like strong and brutal. And like I know, you know, being a surfer that's traveled around the world, the Australians are typically known as kind of being a little more wild and crazy, and like that would be a stereotypical thing that we think of. But today Australians are not like that at all, right? Australians are subdued and basically taken over. But I think it goes back to that those hard times created strong men, and those strong men created great times, and those great times created weak men, and now those weak men are creating bad times. And Australia really hasn't had the problems like a lot of the other countries have. And I think you guys got way too soft. It was way too good for way too long.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing that. So that's the fourth turning is called generational theory. What you'll realize about all cycles is they're all reactionary. They're all cause and effect. And so if we were bowling and you put bumpers up and you hit the ball and it just bounces off one to the next, you know, and it's reactionary. It goes too far one way, and then so it swings back the other way. There's another book, back to the pendulum. There's another book actually titled The Pendulum, which actually covers an 80-year cycle as well. A little bit different though. And it talks about going from a we cycle, which is collectivism. We're all in this together, to individualism, which is about a me cycle. Yep. And really, again, I don't know a lot about the politics in Australia, but it doesn't really matter. Like people are like, well, Nazis were right. And so, you know, fascism right. And socialism is left, and like Democrats and left and right and Republicans. And like, it's all a bunch of nonsense. It's all a bunch of words that I don't know what they mean. What I believe is the two sides are individualism and collectivism. So Nazism and fascism and socialism, are they right, left, or whatever? Well, they're all collectivist. Right? They're all central planners versus individualism. And so I think that's the difference. And so then what's interesting is that solutions are supposed to come to problems. So I say supposed to because today we have central banks printing so much money. This money's out trying to solve problems that don't need to be solved. But every 50 years, we have this technological revolution. And so We go back, the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. Then we had the age of steam engines and steel. And a new technology is like an iPhone. Like, that's cool. But like a technological revolution is something that changes the way humanity works. So the Industrial Revolution brought people from the farms into the cities. Obviously, steam engines. We had manpower and horsepower. Now we had steam engine power. We had steel. Before we could build 2 stories. Now we could build skyscrapers and bridges. Then we had electricity, right? These are things that change humanity. Then we had oil and automobiles. For all of humanity, people walked and rode horses, and now we had cars, right? It was a big deal. 1971 was the age of the microprocessor, which was personal computers and telecommunications and internet, right? Information age, what we're doing right now. And 1971 plus 50 years puts us right here today. And we're at the front of another technological revolution, not a new technology, a technological revolution, something that changes the way humanity works. It's that big. And what's interesting is solutions come to problems. So what is the problem? The problem is peak centralization. The problem is peak centralization. The problem is unlimited money printing.
Yeah.
Unlimited money printing. The problem is censorship. The problem is that we used to have rule of law. Today we're ruled by men who arbitrarily change the rules on us all the time, right? So those are the problems that we have, and the solutions are supposed to come to problems. So we need something that has that's decentralized. Instead of centralized, it's decentralized. Nobody can control it. Instead of having an unlimited money supply, we have a fixed monetary supply. Instead of having censorship, we have something that's censorship resistant. Instead of having something that is ruled by men that arbitrarily change the rules, we have immutable law. And if you believe that those are the problems that we have and those solutions that we need, and it's very easy to see that there's a technological revolution happening, and the technology is giving us exactly those things. So that's interesting. And then I would say then the third thing was there's every 80 years, there's a financial revolution. Now, these things all pour into each other, right? Because they're reactionary. So the political revolution leads to a technological revolution. The technology needs to give us what we need. And then the technological revolution drives a new financial market. So I told you those technological revolutions, and you can see how the previous one, the microprocessor and telecommunications, led to, all the computer companies and the Bezos and the Gates getting rich. Previous to that was the automobile. So that was the Fords and the GMs. They all got rich. Previous to that, it was the Rockefellers and the Carnegies for steel and oil, right? And so each one leads to a new financial market. So about every 80 years, there's a financial revolution. And we can see 80 years ago was the Bretton Woods, right? The whole world changed. The entire world went to a one world monetary system where the dollar was backed by gold. The rest of the currencies backed to the dollar. And we can see now today that that the IMF is calling for a Bretton Woods 2 moment. A Bretton Woods 2. Well, Bretton Woods 1 is when they reset the entire financial system, and that's what they're calling for again right now as well. And so I think when you look at all three of those things together, it tells a pretty compelling picture. I think it tells us, one, that the future. So a lot of people are saying, well, what's going to happen? Like, is the dollar going to lose the reserve status in the world? Would the Chinese yuan take over? Will it be a new gold standard? How about will the IMF give us an SDR basket? Like, what comes next? But see, they're all asking for a centralized answer. But the future's not. The future's not centralized. The future's decentralized. And so Bitcoin is my standard, right? Bitcoin is now S&P 500 companies like MicroStrategy. It's their standard. It's now countries like El Salvador standard, right? And so individually, we're all choosing to adopt it. But while everybody's waiting for the powers on high to come tell us what the next thing is, it's not about that, right? It's a decentralized movement. So I think that's what shows what's happening. Kind of how we got here, and more importantly, what the future holds.
So you've said human freedom always wins, and history tells us we have this natural drive towards freedom. So do you think freedom's going to win here? Do you think more?
So I went to Miami last week and I recorded a monster podcast episode with Peter McCormick from What Bitcoin Did. It just got released today at the time of this recording, whatever. It's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, where we really dug in deep to this concept. And the title of the podcast is The Battle for the Fate of Humanity, which is actually the book that I'm going to be writing. And so what I would say to that question is I do believe that. I do believe that there's a human drive for freedom. And we know that because throughout history, right, humans continually strive for that, continually throw over governments. The thing that I'm worried about, the thing that scares me, and the thing that motivates me at the same time is that as far back as we can go through history, we can see it's a never-ending cycle. So it's freedom, oppression, revolution, and then back to freedom, oppression, revolution, and then back to freedom, oppression, revolution. It just kind of repeats over and over and over. I believe that cycle is about to be broken. And that's a big thing because it's been happening since the beginning of time. And I think that cycle is about to be broken. And I think we either go to permanent enslavement for the rest of humanity. So we can see the whole world's trending towards authoritarianism, obviously. Australia is trying to copy China as fast as they can, and the rest of the world's trying to do the same. And so technology is now giving these authoritarians the tools they need with censorship, through AI, through your social media. They can change what information you see, what information you have access to. They can censor you. They can stop free thought. They can stop communication. They can keep us distanced, all these things. And then with central bank digital currencies and passports, and then, all these things, digital IDs they're layering on. I think they might have the tools they need to prevent a revolution from ever happening again. I think they could do that. And that scares the heck out of me. Or we win here and now. The state is already crumbling. And when I say the state, I mean the nation state is crumbling. They're falling apart. They have two tools. They can control interest rates and monetary policy. Interest rates are at zero or negative. Monetary policy, they're at $300-400 trillion in debt. They're out of those tools. The system's crumbling. It's falling apart. It's not going to work. And now we have this decentralized revolution. We have Bitcoin, which defunds the state. It's defensive and offensive. It's defensive. It allows me to store my wealth and just opt out of their system. I don't have to deal with that system anymore. I can opt out of it. And it's defunding them. So as they're crashing, we're also pushing them. And I think I don't know if you guys are old enough or you've went and watched Star Wars, the original Star Wars movie. And they were fighting against the Empire, and the Empire had the Death Star, and the scene is they were flying in, and they had to fly through this channel, and there was this one spot that they had to hit, and like Luke Skywalker hit it, and when he blew that spot up, the Death Star fell apart, and the whole Empire crumbled. Right, that one spot, that's the money printer.
Yep.
If we defeat the money printer, the entire empire crumbles, and Bitcoin is the tool that beats the money printer. And I believe if we can beat it and we can take away that power, they'll never be able to regain the power again, and the cycle will be broken. So either way, I think the cycle breaks. Either we go into permanent slavery or we go into permanent freedom.
So
and I think
like the church and state, like if you can separate that, just like you can separate state and money, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. But more than that, right? It's not just separating money from state. It's separating man from money. Not just the state and money, man and money, right? Taking it away from anybody's control, not just the state's control, but yeah, the state as well.
Yeah.
And so I think the cycle is going to be broken. I think this is the battle for the fate of humanity. I think it's that big. I think it's that important. I think we have a couple years to get this done. And that's my motivation for working so hard.
That's also our motivation to getting you on the show, Mark, is to continue to spread the word. It's
incredible. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there's hope. There's hope.
100%.
There's hope, but there's hope, but the odds are stacked against us at this point, and the future is scary, right? And so, like, if we don't win here, man, like our kids and our grandkids are gonna be living in permanent slavery.
That's crazy. I was just gonna say, if I could jump in, boys, and quickly ask. So, Mark, well, first of all, I'm of the opinion there's a renaissance in retail investing going on right now, and it's because of access to independent information and people like yourself who clearly got a lifetime of experience, a load of cuts and bruises, and strapped up limbs to prove the difficulties you've had, but equally now sharing all of this information. I every day have conversations with people when I try and talk about Bitcoin. And interestingly, I recently went to a protest here in Melbourne. I had a sign that said "Want freedom, buy Bitcoin," and there was hundreds of thousands of people on the street saying this does not work for us. Not a single Bitcoin sign in sight, except for one bloke who said the Bitcoin is also unvaxxed sperm is like the new Bitcoin, and it went viral. I saw it all over the place. But my point for telling this being people approach me all day long going, okay, why are you talking about this? Why is it important? There is an incredible part of this is about teaching people about the opportunity that we believe we see. And I've heard you talk in the past about the best approach for that is to understand what people's problems are. So I'd love to, I can hear it so clearly when you're talking about the cycles, you're talking about technology, politics, and monetary systems at the same time. It's amazing. What for you is the best way of helping translate this to people? And is it that understand their problem first? I'd just like to get through that thought process.
So the first thing I would say is I'm actually going to push back on something that you said. You said there's a renaissance in investing. I would say,
well, Mark, specifically retail. So people at home,
what I would say to that is, while there certainly are more people investing than ever before today, that's not a good thing. It's a sign of how bad things are. It's a sign of society breaking down. So there is, I said I would come back to this. So the Roman Republic was the longest lasting best government in history, went for 500 years as a republic, and the Roman Republic turned into the Roman Empire. Within 250 years, the Roman Empire was gone. After the Roman Empire fell, the barbarians took over. The world went into what's known as the Dark Ages, right? So all history was lost. The barbarians destroyed everything, and the whole world was fumbling around, didn't know what to do. In 1470, the printing press was invented. The printing press allowed information to become decentralized. So all of a sudden, information started getting out to everybody. Information became decentralized. Everyone started getting it. And at the same time, in Florence, they developed the florin, which was universally recognized, a globally recognized gold coin. It was the longest lasting gold coin without debasement, went almost 400 years. Wow. And the combination of the explosion of information because of the printing press and a globally recognized currency that didn't get debased led to the Renaissance, to your point, the Renaissance, which was the greatest explosion of development the world had ever seen. That was 500 years ago. Every 250 years, the revolution flips. The next revolution was the Industrial Revolution. Then we went to machines. We went to, that. And then now we're facing another revolution that I believe is what I'm calling the Renaissance 2.0. So we have the same two catalysts. One, the internet was sort of like the printing press. It's decentralized information. There's an explosion of information today. And two, the second ingredient was the florin, which is the longest lasting globally recognized coin without being debased. Today we have Bitcoin. So I believe the same two catalysts that we had in the last Renaissance are the same two catalysts we have today. And the cycles also tell us that to be true. So I do think we're going into a Renaissance. But, and back to the point, the fact that all these retail traders are in the space, I'm actually going to make the video I have going on YouTube tomorrow is about this exact topic. I'm calling it Generation Gamble. And it's actually a sign of the times, and it shows how bad things are. And so remember when I was telling you my story and I said, I'll come back to this. I talked about my very first property I bought from the bank. I was buying them from the bank because they couldn't sell them because they were so messed up. People couldn't get loans on them. I had to fix them up. I had to add value and then I would sell them, right? So we're supposed to get paid for providing value. That's how the world's supposed to work. I'm supposed to solve your problem or your need. Like business is the opposite of being greedy. Business is like a servant. I have to serve you if I want your money, right? But the problem that we have today, because we're built in this fiat money system, is our entire system is built on theft, lies, and deceit. And it's caused basically a culture of gambling or grift. And so right now, options trading has surpassed stock trading for the first time in history. Everyone's quitting their jobs to be options traders on Robinhood or crypto traders. And when they're trading these options or trading these futures contracts or trading this cryptocurrency, there's no value being provided. I'm selling it to you for 10, you sell it back to me for 15, I sell it to you for 20, you sell it to me for 25, I sell it to you for... What value have we provided? We've provided zero. But what we're doing is we're increasing our dollar stack without providing any value to the world. And then we're taking that money that I've made for providing no value to anybody, and then I'm going to go steal your value away with that fake money. And so it's a net drag. It just brings the whole world down. And I don't fault any one person, because I mean, that's an easy way to make money today. But if you look at society as a whole, you could see how bad that is as a whole. The world is not providing value to anybody. We're just dragging the whole world down, if that makes sense. And we're forced to do that. We have to do that, because our money is losing value so fast. They're inflating the friggin' money supply so fast. If we don't do that, we're going to lose purchasing power. So to your point, Jake, I mean, we're definitely seeing a rise of that 100%, a renaissance, if you will. I agree with you on that. And people are forced into that because of the money system, but it shouldn't be that way. It's not good. And it leads to bad things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What a response. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. And
all right. Now back to the second question.
Teach people in the best way. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to the second question. I've been commenting a lot on Twitter. I like to share these protests going along, and it helps build my thesis. Look, people are pushing back against centralization. I also want to keep encouraging people, like, hey, stand up, do not comply, right? And so I share that a lot. But I've often said many times on Twitter and just to other people that if all of those people would just go to their bank and pull all their money out of their bank, that would cause a revolution before the morning. That'd be it. Like, okay, that's great. I love seeing you guys out in the streets. Thank you. But like, literally, if you want to cause change, like, go just pull your money out of the bank and go buy Bitcoin. If everyone would do that. And so, that would be great. So I love the fact that you went down there with the sign. I love that. I've seen, I don't support what BLM stands for in the United States, but I've seen some of the BLM leaders even telling them, like, get your money out of the bank, buy Bitcoin. But what I would say to answer that question is, to your point, you're right that you have to talk to somebody based off the problem that they have. So the people in the street, they're mad because their freedom has been taken away, right? That's the problem they have. Their problem they're facing right now is this government overreach, this government oppression. Their freedoms are being taken away. So what are they motivated to? They're motivated to get their rights back. How do we do that? We do that by taking the power away from the government. How do we do that? By taking away their money. Right?
Super simple, yeah.
It's super simple. Do you want to take your power back from the state? Yes. Do you know what the source of their power is? What? Money. They can print an unlimited amount of money. How do they pay these police to come in here and bash your heads and spray pepper spray? Like, how do they build these quarantine camps with the money printer? So if we take away their power of the money printer, then they can't go build quarantine camps. Then they can't pay the military. Like, so let's just defund them. So I think that's the answer that everybody would probably.
Yeah, that's what they've used here as leverage. So like, listen, if you don't get the vax, well then we're gonna freeze your bank account, or we can't let you go to work, whatever. Whereas I don't worry about that because I got 100% of my wealth in Bitcoin, so you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
that's where my wealth is, and you don't have control over it. Yeah,
become an uncancelable.
Speaking of which, you mentioned something earlier, Mark, about basically the ability to, why do we live basically in one place and not have the ability to move around, for a better word? And you mentioned you might pose a question in that space to us. I'm curious to hear exactly what's going through.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I'm wrestling with on my own, and you guys are living there. So about, like, I think I said, for about a dozen years, I've been studying, this whole flag theory. And for about a decade, I've believed, I've felt, I've known that there was going to be a point in time where the United States, the walls were going to close in and I was probably going to have to leave. I wanted to get out before the walls were closed in on me. And I've known this for like a decade. And now here I am thinking, like, shoot, there's like a real possibility. And so for my friends down in Australia or Austria or Germany, where this is happening to them, I'm like, why are you still there? Like, why didn't you leave? That's one question. And I asked that question because I'm asking for myself, because they were floating around that maybe they're going to come out with new restrictions to get into the United States this week. And they want to say, like, you have to do a test within 24 hours before you come in, another test within 48 hours of landing. And then regardless of your vaccination status and regardless of your test results, you still have to do a 7-day quarantine on top of that. And I'm like, okay, the next step after that will just be nobody goes in or out, right? And so like I'm asking myself, like, okay, I've been ready for this for a decade, but like now here I am. And if they announced in 30 days from now, we're going to close the borders, like, what am I going to do? Like, am I actually going to leave or am I going to stay? And so anyway, it's a question I'm asking myself right now. And so you guys are on the other side of that decision. So I was just curious.
Yeah, well, probably had it to Jigs and Jake, because they've certainly looked at it in a lot of depth, and we've discussed that on our Web So Bloody Early channel as well. It's something with serious consideration because it affects generations. The decision is real. And Jake in particular with Jigs has gone through it in a bit of detail. So Jake, maybe you can have a bit of a brief.
It's funny, Mark, like inertia is real. You can kind of see the problem and it's rising and looming. And in fact, you're locked in your own fucking house for almost 300 days. I became a parent in the bedroom next door, like craziness. We couldn't have the mother-in-law visit because she was too far away. We weren't able to go to work. It was nuts, completely nuts, but it's for your health. It's crazy. So I've looked into Plan B passport, and there's the nomad capitalist as well. On a personal level, I'm new to Australia, having grown up in the UK, and I'm keen to get my Australian citizenship because of my age at the moment. If I was to leave and try and come back in 20 years' time, it's more difficult. And I've got another 24 months or something to get citizenship. And then after that, I was thinking I'd look at what it might mean to purchase maybe a Antiguan citizenship and look at more of a decentralized and nomadic lifestyle. It also kind of coincides with Bitcoin cycles. So, do
you want to stay there for another 24 months? And
at this point, I've made peace with the fact that that's what I was going to do. So yes, the answer is I'm going to deal with it. But for example, if you've decided not to follow the government's vaccination schedule, then you're not officially allowed into restaurants. You're not allowed to go to any of the sports events. You're not potentially allowed in the office. Many people aren't able to go to work because of their medical freedoms. And most people have given up, frankly. 90% of Victorians are vaccinated. And I don't know anyone that did it because they think it's good for their health. They've done it because the government's told them they have to do it. Or if they don't, they can't go to work. And, there was a point when they had these very, very strict, like 5 kilometer radius travel restrictions, 1 hour out of your house. And there was a demonstration that was basically against the government. And they turned up with riot police and shot everyone with rubber bullets. I mean, it's the most unfair battle I've ever seen. It's extraordinary. And then the media will obviously tell everyone that the amount of people there was a lot fewer. Those kind of people were also completely fucking mental and no one would ever trust them. And it's amazing because in a way, there's also been this huge pushback. There's an independent journalist here who was a wedding photographer, and he's been out with a Facebook live stream, and he's got 250,000 people following him now. And it's because he shows what actually is going on. And he's like, people can watch my live stream and see that there's just normal people on the street saying, we don't agree. And it's not the 5-second clip in the, on the mainstream media that night.
But this is this decentralization of media as well. Now you're seeing people give out what's actually happening. I mean, my wife was telling me that someone set themselves alight yesterday because of these lockdown mandates and stuff like that.
In their own car.
And there wasn't even anything on the news. Nothing. Like, you only hear about it because of Twitter and this decentralization of everyone sharing the information.
Mark, I'm aware that an hour has flown by with you and you're probably pressed for time. This conversation could go on a lot longer.
I can go for a few minutes, but we can wrap it up if you're ready, whatever.
I mean, I guess just a closing comment to your question is it's extraordinary, the inertia. I see the threat and I'm not sure what to do about it. Thankfully, I've already moved a significant portion of my wealth into Bitcoin. But if we wanted to leave the country, my wife, as an Australian passport holder, has to get either an exemption to leave, or we have to leave for more than 3 months. So we basically have to pack up everything and just leave, which in theory we could do, but I don't necessarily see it's got quite to that point. But I could be, in 12 months' time, I could say to you, Mark, I got that completely fucking wrong.
Well, 12 months ago, you wouldn't have guessed this either.
But the other feeling that Jake puts to me, and I'm in a position where I could, I grew up in apartheid. I was born in South Africa, grew up in apartheid. I've seen the worst of the worst, right? And now I'm here. Obviously, they've become very complacent here, and it would never happen like what happened in Greece, where they shut the banks. It would never happen. It can happen, right? And so we can leave. Like I've had my dad's cousin, he had to fly to South Africa 2 weeks ago because his mum had a stroke and wasn't allowed back in because of Omicron. And now he's double vaxxed, boosted. He's allowed to come back, but he has to go to one of these camps, right? And stay there, even though he's tested negative. Like, just
it's mind blowing.
So I've looked at going as well, but Jake always says to me, you know, you might be jumping out of the fry pan and into the fire. Like where you move to might get worse, or, you know, these are these things we've got to.
Well, the one
we're young guys with in-laws, and you've got your elder in-laws that you want to be close to with grandkids and stuff like that. So there's all
these are not easy decisions. They're not good decisions, you know. Unfortunately, they've put us into a very difficult situation. The other thing I think about is, in my opinion, in my research, and I guess just my opinion, I think the only way this breaks, the only way we break this trend of authoritarianism is through competition, not through guns. And you guys don't have any, obviously. We still have them, but it's through competition, right? And so, if the president of El Salvador now has said, we have no mandates, we have no restrictions, we have no tests. We give you vaccines if you want them. We have 70% of our people have taken them, and you're more than welcome to take them, but we're not forcing anything. And by the way, come here, start a business. We'll give you residency, no taxes. Come make as much money as you want. So guess what? A lot of people are going there. And then guess what happens? Well, then the next country is over. Go, well, shoot, us too. And then more people go there.
This is this is where you say, put your money where it's treated best. Whereas now we're seeing this, go where you're treated best.
Go where you're treated best, you know? Yeah. And so what happens is then if enough investment capital and enough productive people move to El Salvador, then Nicaragua and Costa Rica is going to do the same thing. And then Panama, and then Mexico. And then eventually the United States is going to go, holy crap, like we're losing everybody. I guess we should lighten up. But as long as we just stay there and take it and keep giving them our money, how is that ever going to change? And you mentioned before, like multiple generations, you know, and so like I think back, obviously, with an American lens, but in America, growing up, I had lots of friends who came, whose families had come from. Actually, some of my best friends had come from South Africa, and they escaped there. And when they came with no money. They had no money. They couldn't bring their real estate, their bank accounts, no nothing. And they came for future generations, right? Like it was rough for the parents, but the kids were able to grow up free, you know. And so it's not a good decision at all. They've put us all into very difficult situations. And we're not all in this together. We're all trying to figure this out on our own. So it's just interesting to talk to different people and think about it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, I'd just like to say, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. It's been fantastic to hear about your thesis. There's clearly a huge amount of work that's gone into it. And the fact that you're able and willing to share it with us is amazing. And we'll be passing it on to anyone that will listen, frankly. So thank you from me. Sure.
Thanks for taking the time, Mark.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Good talking to you guys.
Really appreciate it.
Stay strong down there, man. Don't give in. Hold the line.
We'll do our best. Take care. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thanks so much.